Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Riley Lewis, filling in for Kara McKinney. Joe Biden's parting gift to the American people might just be a global thermonuclear war with Russia. Instead of cutting taxes or finally closing the southern border to protect the American people, he's escalating tensions with Moscow to levels never seen before, prompting concerns about a direct war between the U.S. and Russia in the coming years. How fitting. In the same way his domestic policy decisions have wrecked our country in large part, his foreign policy decisions have wrecked many other countries, including both Russia and Ukraine. His direct actions as commander-in-chief have led to pointless bloodshed on the world stage, and now the situation there is expected to worsen because he has now agreed to supply Ukraine with U.S.-made anti-personnel mines. Yes, that's right, mines. Now, these particular mines are reportedly non-persistent, which means they will self-destruct after a certain amount of time in order to minimize any long-term dangers to civilians or non-combatants. However, it is still a very dangerous decision and possibly a very costly one. Now, these mines could get a lot of people killed, including non-combatants, and they will almost certainly prolong the war, especially since this new move follows Biden's decision on Monday of this week to allow Ukraine's military to deploy American-made long-range missiles into Russia as well. Then, just like clockwork, Ukraine's military launched a major strike on Russia the very next day on Tuesday. And since, U.S. officials have issued a warning about the possibility of a retaliatory airstrike from Russian forces. The U.S. government shut down its embassy in Kyiv yesterday and even told embassy employees to shelter in place, which is a highly unusual move. Although the State Department said it's just a precautionary measure and they expect the embassy to reopen later this week, possibly even today. So we'll see what happens. Now, the concerns are also shared by the governments of France, Greece, and Italy because the Greek and Italian embassies have closed as well. And the staff at the French embassy have been warned about the situation. Meanwhile, two members of Ukraine's military told Reuters they recently received messages warning them of a major Russian attack, which would include hundreds of drones, warplanes, and warships. It's unclear who sent these messages or how exactly they were sent. However, what is clear is the volatile nature of this moment in the war. Tensions are at an all-time high. Everybody's bracing for impact, and instead of spending his last days in office pushing for peace, Biden is pushing for more destruction and violence. Then, on top of it all, there's still the question of Ukrainian membership within NATO. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has requested NATO membership multiple times in the past year, and while Western leaders have entertained the idea, at least, in the abstract, nobody has actually gone through with it yet because it is a red line in the sand for Russian President Vladimir Putin. And speaking of NATO, President-elect Trump has nominated former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker as the next U.S. ambassador to the organization. In an official statement about it yesterday, Trump wrote in part, quote, "Matt is a strong warrior and loyal patriot who will ensure the United States' interests are advanced and defended. Matt will strengthen relationships with our NATO allies and stand firm in the face of threats to peace and stability. He will put America first. I have full confidence in Matt's ability to represent the United States with strength, integrity, and unwavering dedication. I look forward to working closely with him as we continue to promote peace through strength, freedom, and prosperity around the world." End quote. Joining us now to discuss is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thank you for joining us.
Hey, good evening, Riley.
So a lot of people are wondering what the strategy is right now with the Biden administration when it comes to these landmines. So what do you make of what's going on?
Everything the Biden administration is doing right now looks like an intentional provocation of Russia, of Moscow, and it looks like an escalation of the conflict. I mean, the real issue is we're moving very rapidly this week at a pace towards more and more direct involvement in this conflict. And the more directly we are involved in this conflict, the more Russia is going to have to push back, and the more danger we face that this becomes a war that spreads outside of these two belligerents and has the potential to become a nuclear war. There's a lot of things that are happening that we have to look at closely. One of the things we see is there are numerous reports that Russia is building and deploying radiation-proof shelters for their personnel, for key personnel throughout the country. country. There are other actions that they're taking, including changing their stance on the use of nuclear weapons and when they will use them. And one of the things they say is clearly directed at the United States, because they're saying not only are we willing to use nuclear weapons against enemies that we're in direct conflict with or that have nuclear weapons to use against us, they have said if we have active conflict, active hostilities going on with another nation, and that nation is being supported by a nation with nuclear weapons, then we are willing to use them to defend ourselves. So all of these things seem to be extremely reckless, especially at this point in time. Why is there this urgency to make these policy changes right after an election when, as soon as the election occurred, as soon as Trump became president-elect, there was already discussions about negotiations, there's already discussions about peace deals on the table? Why do this? What is the innocent explanation from this White House for doing this, other than intentionally provoking Russia and bringing the world closer to the potential of World War III?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because if it's true that the reports that there are North Korean soldiers that are fighting for Russia, now we do have multiple nation states that are getting involved. So you could argue maybe it's already starting. But I also just, on that note that you just bring up, I mean, I still am trying to wonder, just looking back, it's been almost 3 years of this war between Russia and Ukraine. And I'm still trying to figure out why exactly is the U.S. supporting Ukraine? Because had it not been for our support, I don't think this war would have gone on for even longer than a couple of months. So, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I really just do wonder, what is the honest and possibly innocent explanation for our involvement even at all?
Yeah, it doesn't look reasonable. It doesn't look wise. It doesn't look directly connected to our national interests. So it brings up people who worry about things like this is just supporting the military-industrial complex. I mean, the people that are benefiting from this are large defense contractors. So that's always a concern when we have conflict like this. And it's sad that we have to say that. It's sad that I have to say that as a retired military officer, that we have the lack of confidence in our own leadership in the White House in conducting these things and have to look for other reasons. But there isn't that clear, precise connection to what is in the best interest of the United States to continue to have this involvement. And again, why are we doing this right after an election when we have elected someone who has a history of being able to negotiate peace agreements, whether you like him or not? He has a history of being able to do that. And we know these people are willing to come to the table when Trump is president. They will be willing to reopen peace negotiations. He will be a influence on that. So why are we doing this now? What is in the best interest of the United States in provoking Russia and Ukraine into escalating attacks that are only going to get more people killed?
Absolutely. So I'd like to ask you there, because I don't know what Putin's response is going to be. I don't think he's going to go nuclear, because the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, it still holds up. But still, I mean, this is a very weird time to be doing all of this with, you know, this sort of weird buffer between a lame duck administration and an incoming one. So I do wonder, do you think that Putin's just going to wait for this incoming administration to come in? Do you think he's going to respond immediately? I mean, I just don't understand what he might do, because, again, I think we should be very skeptical of Putin, absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, if we keep escalating tensions against him and allowing now, you know, long-range missiles to go directly into Russian territory and deep inside Russian territory, I mean, at some point he's going to have to do something just to protect his own homeland and his own people. So I don't trust him, I don't like him, but I'm just saying he's also not a fool. So I just wonder what road we're going down, and if this is going to change things for Trump as he comes into office.
Yeah, I think we will see Russia use ICBMs, so intercontinental ballistic missiles that are nuclear capable but without nuclear warheads. So I don't think reasonably that Putin and Russia are going to use nuclear weapons at this time, but I do think they are going to demonstrate that capability. And so I think they will retaliate against Ukraine. I think they will use airstrikes. I think they'll use, you know, shipboard missiles from their fleet. And I think they will also want to demonstrate the capability of launching ICBMs just to demonstrate to Ukraine and the rest of the world they are still capable of doing that as a show of force, you know, and sort of escalating things. As Ukraine escalates them, they will escalate back. But don't miss this. I mean, one of the things that is being said, and if you listen to the chatter, one of the things that Putin and his people are saying is that these missiles that Ukraine is launching that are U.S. weaponry that we've given them authorization to use, there's questions about if they're even trained to target them properly unless the U.S. is assisting with the targeting. Again, if we are doing that, if that's what's happening, then Russia is going to be provoked by that. They're going to have to respond in some manner. Doesn't mean they're going to attack us yet. Doesn't mean it's reached that point. But this is very dangerous to continue to persist in this, especially during a lame duck administration.
It certainly is, and I really would like some answers from this administration because Joe Biden has been asked about it multiple times, including just the other day, and he just walks away from the reporter. So we're not even getting any answers about the thought process here, about the underlying logic, about the strategy. So I don't even know what's going on, but I'd really like to ask you, I mean, what do you think?
We're going to pass a resolution that says you don't have the authority to do this unconstitutionally in violation of the War Powers Act to continue to get us involved in what creates the imminent possibility of hostilities between American armed forces and a foreign nation. So part of this is just how lazy we've gotten, how weak Congress has become in not pushing back against the executive. So I have hope in some respects that this kind of provocation, this dangerous provocation, will get Congress to act, will get people to have a backbone, but we're going to need to see change, and hopefully it doesn't come too late to prevent more people from being killed in this conflict.
Yes, absolutely. I certainly hope that you're right about that. And I also agree with you that I think Congress really needs to step up here and sort of be a check and a bulwark against that overreaching executive branch, because you're right. We haven't declared war since December of 1941. And I think it's really, really just quite shocking when people think about that. So that is a very interesting point to bring into this conversation, Davis. And I thank you for doing that. And also, I thank you for your time today. We're coming up against a break, but I really appreciate your analysis.
Thank you. Take care.